The day started with laughter, music, and celebration. My brother-in-law's wedding was supposed to be a joyful memory. But that night, one cruel sentence from my mother-in-law changed everything. Before dozens of guests, she looked at me and said, "He's just our servant." Everyone laughed except my wife. I smiled to hide the pain. But what she said next silenced the entire hall. That night, respect, pride, and truth clashed, and one woman's courage taught everyone the real meaning of love. It had been months since my wife's family had been planning her brother's wedding. Everyone in the family was excited. Her mother, her sisters, her cousins. Every conversation at their house seemed to begin and end with wedding talk. The decorations, the menu, the guest list, the dresses. As for me, I tried to stay helpful and polite. But deep down, I could already feel the small cracks in how I was being treated. You see, my wife's family had never truly accepted me. To them, I was the quiet man from the small town, someone who didn't belong to their fancy world of designer clothes and polished accents. When I married my wife, Amara, I thought love would be enough to bridge those worlds. She was kind, educated, and gentle, the type of woman who could calm storms with a few words. But her mother, Mrs. Daniels, always carried that cold smile, the one that said, "You'll never be one of us." The first time I noticed the shift was during the early wedding preparations. I'd arrived to help move furniture, hang lights, or carry boxes, but no one ever said thank you. They just nodded or gave me new tasks, as if I was hired help, not family. Still, I stayed quiet. My father always told me, respect your elders, even when they don't respect you back. Silence speaks louder than anger. So, I smiled through the discomfort, telling myself that once the wedding was over, everything would return to normal. But deep down, something told me that this wedding would be the turning point. One evening, as I sat fixing some string lights in the garden, I overheard my mother-in-law speaking to one of her friends. Her tone was soft but sharp, each word landing like a small blade. "Oh yes, Amara married someone. Simple," she said, her lips curling into that familiar smirk. "He's not from our social circle, but he's obedient, always ready to help around the house." The women laughed, light, dismissive laughter that burned through me more than shouting ever could. I froze behind the bushes, heart pounding, obedient, ready to help. Was that how she saw me, as a servant in her perfect world? When I told Amara about it that night, she sighed softly and held my hand. "I'm sorry, love, she doesn't mean to hurt you. That's just how she talks sometimes." But her words couldn't erase the ache, because I realized that maybe, just maybe, her mother really did mean it. As the wedding day drew closer, my responsibilities seemed endless. I was up early, helping the decorators set up the tent, arranging chairs, and guiding the caterers. The Daniels family barely acknowledged me. I was invisible unless there was something heavy to lift or something broken to fix. Even guests who came early to visit would ask, "Oh, are you the event manager?" I'd smile politely and say, "No, just family." Their eyebrows would raise slightly before they walked away, as if they didn't quite believe me. That night, when I got home, my wife noticed how quiet I was. "You're working so hard," she said softly, "and no one's even noticing." I forced a smile. "It's okay. It's your brother's big day. I'm just happy for him." But inside, I felt small, invisible, like the respect I once carried as a husband was slowly being stripped away. Piece by piece, then came the final rehearsal dinner. The entire family was there, laughing, drinking, and taking pictures. Mrs. Daniels was in her element, greeting everyone with pride. She looked stunning in her silver gown, her posture straight as royalty. When she saw me setting up the sound system, she smiled faintly and called out, "Ah, there's our helping hand, always around when we need something done." People chuckled lightly, and once again, I laughed along, pretending it didn't hurt. That night, when everyone left, Amara found me sitting outside alone. The fairy lights above us flickered gently. "You don't deserve this," she whispered. "I'll talk to her after the wedding. Just a few more days, okay?" I nodded, but something deep inside told me that this wasn't going to stop on its own. Because sometimes, disrespect doesn't end until life forces it to. And I didn't know then, but the wedding day itself would become that moment, the day my silence would meet its breaking point. The morning of the wedding was golden sunlight spilling over the Daniels' grand estate like honey. Birds chirped, music floated through the air, and people buzzed around in excitement. It should have been a beautiful day, one filled with joy and family. But for me, the day began with exhaustion and a strange heaviness I couldn't shake. By 6 a.m., I was already at the venue, setting up the sound system, fixing the table arrangements, and helping the photographers carry their equipment. The decorators waved and smiled politely, assuming, once again, that I was part of the hired staff. I didn't bother correcting them anymore. "Could you adjust that corner light?" "Yes, sir." "Oh, and please bring some chairs over here." Every order landed like a small reminder. I wasn't here as a guest. I was here as help. And my mother-in-law, Mrs. Daniels, made sure to reinforce that image whenever possible. At around 10 a.m., as the final touches were being made, I went inside to check on my wife. Amara, she was getting her makeup done, surrounded by her cousins and bridesmaids. When she saw me in the mirror, she smiled, a soft, reassuring smile that made my heart settle for a moment. "You've done so much today," she whispered when I approached. "Please, take a break. Eat something." I nodded. "I'm fine. I'll rest once everything starts." Before I could leave, her mother entered the room, her perfume announcing her before her voice did. She looked at me, then at Amara. Before I could leave, her mother entered the room, her perfume announcing her before her voice did. She was dressed elegantly in gold and ivory, her jewelry catching the morning light. Her expression, however, was as sharp as ever. She looked at me briefly, not with warmth, but with that same dismissive glance she'd always given me. "Oh, there you are," she said casually, as if she had discovered a misplaced object. "Can you check if the catering team has arrived? And please remind them not to overfill the glasses like last time. We can't have sloppy service today." Her words were calm, but her tone carried that subtle sting, the one that turned every polite request into a command. The room fell silent for a brief moment. The makeup artist froze mid. A few of Amara's cousins exchanged awkward glances. I swallowed my pride and nodded. "Of course, Mrs. Daniels." As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of Amara's face in the mirror. She looked down, her lips pressed tightly together, guilt flickering in her eyes. Outside, I took a deep breath. The morning breeze felt thick with tension. I told myself just get through today. It's her brother's wedding, I reminded myself. Don't ruin it. Don't make it about you. But deep inside, I felt something shifting. Something fragile beginning to crack. By noon, guests began arriving. Men in pressed suits, women in vibrant dresses, children running around with ribbons and flowers. The estate was alive with laughter and camera flashes. Music played softly from the speakers I had set up earlier. I stayed mostly in the background, making sure everything ran smoothly. I carried trays, adjusted the decor, and helped the servers arrange dishes. People kept mistaking me for the wedding planner or a staff member, and by now, I'd grown numb to it. But what truly hurt wasn't the strangers, it was the people who knew me and said nothing. Amara's family moved through the venue as if I didn't exist. Not a single thank you, not a glance of appreciation, and Mrs. Daniels. She was in her element, walking around with her chin high, introducing people, radiating control. Every word she spoke was coated with pride and authority. When the ceremony began, I finally sat down at the far end of the hall. The chairs were arranged beautifully, and the music swelled as the bride walked in. My wife Amara sat near her mother, smiling softly, looking radiant. For a brief moment, I felt peace. But that peace didn't last. After the ceremony, during the reception, Mrs. Daniels gathered some of her close friends. They stood in a small circle, sipping champagne, gossiping, and laughing. I was walking by, carrying a box of decorations, when her voice reached me loud and clear. "Oh, that's my daughter's husband," she said, gesturing toward me with her glass. "He's very handy around the house, always ready to help like part of the staff." Her friends laughed politely, not knowing the weight of what she had just said. To them, it was a harmless joke. To me, it was humiliation in front of 100 eyes. I froze. For a moment, I considered walking away, pretending I hadn't heard. But something inside me tightened, a knot of pride, pain, and years of swallowed insults. Before I could react, I heard another voice, my wife's. Her tone was calm but firm. It carried across the small crowd like a sudden gust of wind. "Actually, Mom," she said, setting down her glass, "he's not staff. He's my husband, the man who spent the entire week fixing every mistake others made. The one who's been up since dawn, making sure your event runs perfectly." The laughter stopped. Every head turned toward her. Mrs. Daniels blinked in surprise, caught off guard. Amara stood up, her voice steady but sharp with restrained anger. "You may see him as someone beneath you, but I see him as someone far above, because he never needed money or status to have dignity. He just needed your respect, which you never gave him." Gasps rippled through the group. Some tried to change the subject, others stared at the floor. Mrs. Daniels' cheeks flushed crimson, and her lips tightened. "Amara," she said in a warning tone, "this is not the place." "No, Mom," Amara interrupted gently. "This is the place, because this is where you decided to embarrass him." Then, in a quiet but piercing voice, she added, "Maybe it's time people saw who really lacks class here." For a long moment, no one spoke. The air felt heavy, electric. Mrs. Daniels turned away, pretending to adjust her jewelry, trying to reclaim her composure. Her friends avoided eye contact, awkward smiles plastered on their faces. And me, I stood there, frozen, holding the box, not knowing whether to feel proud or broken. I never wanted her to fight for me like that, not in public. But at the same time, something inside me healed. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. Later that evening, when most guests had moved to the dance floor, Amara found me sitting by the garden lights. She sat beside me quietly, resting her head on my shoulder. "I couldn't let her keep doing that," she whispered. "You've done too much for people who never said thank you." I looked at her and smiled softly. "You didn't have to, but thank you." She took my hand. "You're my husband, my family, not a servant." And for the first time that day, I finally exhaled. The heaviness in my chest lifted. But little did I know, her mother's pride had taken a wound. She wouldn't let heal and the next part of our story would test not just our patience, but our love. Amara and I woke up late. She looked exhausted, and I could tell her mind was still replaying what had happened the night before, her words to her mother, the silence that followed, and the stares that lingered longer than they should have. Do you think I went too far? She asked quietly, her fingers tracing the edge of the blanket. I looked at her, studying the uncertainty in her eyes. You spoke the truth, I said, and sometimes, truth sounds louder than people are ready to hear. She gave a faint smile, but I could see she wasn't at peace. Amara had always been close to her family, especially her mother. Despite the harsh words and judgment, she still wanted her approval. But after last night, that bond had cracked. As we made our way downstairs, the tension was thick. The sound of cutlery and muffled conversation filled the dining area. Mrs. Daniels sat at the head of the long table, sipping tea as if nothing had happened. Her expression was unreadable, calm on the surface. But her eyes burned with quiet fury. Her husband, Mr. Daniels, gave me a polite nod when we entered. He was always a man of few words, the kind who avoided conflict at all costs. Good morning, Amara greeted softly. No one responded. The only sound was the gentle clink of a teaspoon. After a few seconds, Mrs. Daniels finally looked up, her smile brittle and cold. Good morning, she said smoothly. I hope you both slept well. After last night's little performance, her tone dripped with sarcasm. I stayed silent, but I felt Amara stiffen beside me. Mom, it wasn't a performance. You humiliated him, she said, keeping her voice controlled. Mrs. Daniels set down her teacup. Humiliated him. Please. I was joking, Amara. You overreacted. Everyone thought it was funny, until you made a scene. Funny. I said before, I could stop myself. Calling your son-in-law a servant in front of your guests is funny to you. Her gaze shifted toward me, sharp as a blade. You took it too seriously. She replied curtly. You've always been sensitive about your status. I clenched my fists under the table. Status. That word again. Always the invisible line she drew between us and them. Amara pushed her chair back slightly. He's my husband. Mom, you don't get to talk to him like that. Mrs. Daniels' lips curled into a cold smile. And you don't get to talk to me like that, young lady. Remember who you're speaking to. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mr. Daniels tried to mediate, mumbling something about keeping peace. But both women were too deep in emotion to hear him. Finally, Amara stood up. You know what, Mom? We're leaving. Her mother's smile vanished. Leaving? Don't be ridiculous. It's your brother's post-wedding brunch. Amara met her gaze. Then enjoy it without us. Without another word, she grabbed my hand and led me toward the door. Outside, the air felt cool and freeing. We walked silently to the car, both of us trying to process what had just happened. I wanted to comfort her, but my own heart was heavy. As we drove away, I glanced at her. Her eyes were glassy, her jaw tense. You didn't have to do that, I said softly. She's still your mother. Amara turned toward me. And you're still my husband. I won't let her keep treating you like you're less than family. Her voice cracked slightly, and I reached over to hold her hand. Thank you, I whispered. We drove in silence for a while, the road stretching endlessly ahead. Neither of us knew that this confrontation would ignite something far worse, something that would test the very core of our marriage. 2 days later, we received a call from her father. His voice was quiet and strained. Amara, your mother isn't doing well, he said. She's been in bed since that morning. You should come talk to her. Amara hesitated. Dad, she doesn't want to see me. She does, he replied after a pause. But, be prepared, she's not the same. When we arrived, Mrs. Daniels was sitting on her bed, staring out the window. The room that once smelled of perfume now carried the faint scent of medicine and silence. She didn't look at us when we entered. Her voice, when it came, was soft, almost fragile. I raised my daughter to marry someone strong, someone successful, someone equal to our family's name. I didn't respond. She finally turned her gaze toward me, but I realize now, strength isn't measured by money or pride. It's in patience, in silence, in how you treated me with respect, even when I gave you none. Her eyes softened slightly, but her pride didn't fully let go. You have that strength. I don't. Amara's eyes filled with tears. She moved closer, taking her mother's hand. Mom, I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted you to see him the way I do. Mrs. Daniels' fingers tightened around hers. I see that now. Then she looked at me again. I'm sorry. For that night, her voice cracked. And for the first time in years, she looked human, not proud, not cold. Just a woman realizing the weight of her own mistakes. We stayed with her that evening, helping around the house. For a while, things felt lighter. But as days turned into weeks, the calm began to fade again. Mrs. Daniels couldn't completely let go of her pride. The apologies were real, but the habits, the subtle remarks, the need for control crept back. Amara noticed it before I did. She began to distance herself from her mother again, choosing peace over confrontation. But the damage had already been done. the family whispers began. People who had seen the confrontation at the wedding started gossiping. Some said Amara had disrespected her elders. Others said I had influenced her against her mother. And just like that, the story was twisted. One night, Amara sat beside me on the balcony, the city lights flickering below us. Do you ever regret marrying into my family? She asked quietly. I looked at her for a long moment. Never, because I didn't marry your family. I married you. She smiled faintly, but I could see the sadness behind it. I wish they saw what I see. I placed my hand over hers. They will, someday. But deep down, I wasn't sure if that day would ever come. What I didn't know was that fate was about to turn again, because a single phone call, a few weeks later, would drag us both back into the chaos we thought we'd escaped. It wasn't from her parents this time. It was from someone else. Someone who claimed to know a secret about me. And that's where the storm truly began. The night after the wedding felt heavy. The laughter, the whispers, the humiliation, everything still echoed in my mind. Amara and I barely spoke in the car. When we reached home, she went straight to the bedroom, and I sat on the porch for a long time, watching the moonlight spill over the quiet yard. Days passed, and the tension between her and her mother only grew. My mother-in-law stopped visiting, but she didn't stop talking. Word spread around the family, twisted versions of what had happened at the wedding. Some said I disrespected her. Others said Amara had shamed her own family. It felt like our home was under a silent attack. Then, one evening, everything changed. Amara came home from work, pale and trembling. She came to my office. She said softly, "My mother. She told my boss that I married beneath me, that you used me for money." I stared at her in disbelief. She did what? Amara nodded, tears forming in her eyes. She said you were poor when we met, that you hid your past, that she should have stopped me from marrying you. I felt something break inside me, not anger, but deep sorrow. And what did you tell her? Amara took a deep breath and met my eyes. I told her that love isn't about money or class. I told her the only person who taught me real dignity was you. For the first time in months, I felt warmth rise in my chest. Her voice didn't shake when she said it. She had found her strength, and she was using it to protect what we'd built together. But the storm wasn't over. A few days later, Amara's father called. "Your mother-in-law found something," he said gravely. "She claims you have a secret, a past marriage." The air in the room grew still. Amara looked at me, confused. "Is it true?" she whispered. I nodded slowly. "Yes, it's true. I was married before. It ended badly. I never told you because it's something I've wanted to forget all my life." She blinked back tears. "You should have told me." "I know," I said gently, "but I didn't want my past to cast a shadow over us. I didn't lie to deceive you. I just wanted peace." She sat down, shaking her head, hurt but silent. The truth hung between us like a wall, but there was something else in her eyes too. Understanding. Later that night, she came and sat beside me. "I've been thinking," she said. "My mother used your silence to control us, but I won't let her anymore. We'll tell everyone the truth. Our version, not hers." And so, we did. At the next family dinner, Amara stood up before anyone could speak. Her mother sat at the head of the table, her expression proud and cold. "Before we eat," Amara said clearly, "there's something I need to say. My husband has a past, just like every one of us. But his honesty, kindness, and respect make him more of a man than anyone here who judges without knowing the truth." The room went silent. Her mother's face turned red, her mouth opening and closing without a word. Then her father, who rarely spoke against her, said quietly, "She's right." That was the moment everything shifted. The control her mother had always held through pride, through gossip, through fear, began to crumble. That night, when we returned home, Amara took my hand and whispered, "We may have lost her approval, but we found our peace." I looked at her, the woman who had once been too afraid to speak against her mother, now standing beside me with pride. "And that," I said softly, "is worth everything." The night air outside was calm again. The echoes of that wedding, that humiliation, those cruel words, they no longer had power over us, because love, when tested, had proven stronger than pride. Sometimes silence hides 1,000 wounds, and one moment of truth can heal them all. That night at the wedding, my wife didn't just defend me. She freed herself from years of control and fear. We learned that respect can't be demanded through status or power. It's earned through compassion and courage. In a world that often values pride over love, her voice became my strength. And from that night on, we decided no one will ever define our worth again.